There for Care is brought to you by CareScout with the goal of sharing real-life conversations about aging care. Views expressed on this program are the speaker's own. We do not provide medical, legal, tax, financial, or other professional advice. Always talk to your own professional advisors for advice tailored to your needs. Hi, welcome to the There for Care podcast, a podcast all about the aging journey, whether you're navigating it for yourself or for someone that you love. I'm Amy Rein, and today with us we have Dr. Judy Benjamin. She's a national board certified health and wellness coach, a yoga teacher, and an advocate for overall healthy living. Today's episode, we're going to hear about Judy's recent adventure of a nearly 3,000-mile walk across the United States to raise awareness for Alzheimer's, why she took on that challenge, and what's next. So thank you for joining us today, Judy.
Thank you very much for asking me. It's a pleasure.
All right. So aging is often framed as something that just kind of happens to us, right? Like you live your life and then at the end you just slow down and you can't do as much. But your experience and your challenge that you took on walking across the United States really challenges that idea. So what do you think about aging now that you've been through this experience, and what does taking charge of your life really mean to you?
Well, that's such a great question and really involves a lot. But I think for me, taking charge is something that I think you kind of either have the personality anyway, and that's sort of the way I've lived my life. But I felt like, what can I do? I'm very physically active. And as you said, I'm a yoga teacher, so I'm fit for my age. And I started my walk at age 80. And now I'm 81 and a half. Add the half like kids do in high school. But I felt like that something as natural as walking is something that any of us can do, assuming you don't really have a physical disability and you can't walk. But if you can walk around your house and down to get the mail out of the mailbox, you can walk. And so I set out and said, I feel like I need to make a statement that despite my age, I can walk, and I can walk every single day. And that's kind of what I did. I wanted to give a message to people that just because you've reached a higher number of age and you're in your whatever, 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s, does not mean you have to sit on the couch and do nothing. And if you do nothing, your health is going to go downhill. And that's what I felt like, that if I can explain that to people, that you can stay healthy by staying active. There are a few more things that I suggest as well, which maybe we'll get to. But certainly being active was primary in my concern. And it would also give me the opportunity, sort of a platform, to tell people about the fact that getting old and losing your memory is not a dead-end street. You can reverse that in many cases. Not all, but in many cases, you can reverse that memory loss by getting your body healthy. And that was my goal, and that was my message. So I feel like it was successful, and now I'm ready to do it again.
Can you tell us about, you were out there for, I think, 2,790 miles from San Diego to St. Augustine. What were some of the highlights of that adventure?
There were highlights almost every day. I mean, it was hardly a really dull day. And the reason, because I met people every day. I met new people. And I think about, I really loved the Willie Nelson song, On the Road Again. And one of the lines in that song is, doing things I've never done before, seeing things I've never seen before, I think is how it goes. And I went out every morning with that attitude that, let's see what's going to happen today. Who am I going to meet? And so as a result, I would talk to everybody. If I stopped into a convenience store or took a break, I would always talk to people. And of course, I was with my walking sticks and my reflective vests, and I was all geared up, and people would say, well, what are you doing? And especially if I'm out on a road by myself, I would pick the small roads. And what are you doing? And that gave me an opportunity to talk about it. And I had little cards that I gave out that told the story. And then people would open up and they would tell me their story. And that's what I love to hear. I know my story, but I wanted to hear their story. And as soon as they heard the word memory loss or aging or Alzheimer's, there would be a story. And it was usually a close family member that had gone through this. And it was just, it made me feel good to be able to talk about it in a positive way. Because it's getting a diagnosis of memory loss is probably one of the worst things that you can do. And people are very depressed and sad. And I try to change that a little bit, change the way you look at it, the way you think about it.
Yeah. When I think about, we talked about you're a board certified health and wellness coach, yoga teacher, but you had this whole other earlier section to your life where you were around the world working with different agencies and nonprofit organizations and things like that. And what I hear you talking about, you loving in the walk, is really about things that I think probably brought you joy for your entire life, right? It was hearing other people's stories, helping them.
Yeah.
So when you think about that idea of finding joy as you age, how did you figure out? Because I think that it seems like that's what you were anchored towards, right? How do you think through, or how do you advise maybe your clients that you work with to, if it's not walking, what is that thing that's going to get them up, get them moving? Yeah. Find their joy.
I think, finding our individual joy is really looking inside ourselves, but to find something that you can latch onto that motivates you, that you enjoy. It doesn't have to be walking. It could be many, many different things. But if you do what you love and what you enjoy, whether it be crocheting or knitting or taking a dance class or talking to a neighbor, if you can interact with another human being, that has a wellness aspect to it. And I think that's something that we've heard a lot about lately, is that loneliness is a very, very bad thing. It affects your health, both physically and mentally. And so for the type of thing that I did with talking to people and walking and chatting, you're pulling out other people's story, and that way it almost gives you a mirror image of what you want to do yourself. So I just encourage people, I encourage my clients to find things they really enjoy doing and do them. I have a little basic exercise. Take a yellow pad and draw a line down the middle. And on the left side, just brain dump all the things that I love to do in my life, whether it's tango dancing or ice skating, it doesn't matter. And then on the other side, when is the last time you've done that?
Mm-hmm.
And okay, people say, well, I'm 65 or I'm 75. Okay, maybe, you're not going to go to the moon, but you can take tango lessons. And you can learn to swim if you've never learned, if you've never been a swimmer. So that little simple exercise, it's amazing, because sometimes people really love to do something and they know how to do it, but they just have let it slide by. And so I try to encourage people to do things that they love that make them happy, in addition to exercise and eating well and sleeping well and all the other things that we know now that are good for you.
Yeah. So you talked about taking on the walk across the U.S. In an attempt to broaden awareness around memory loss and Alzheimer's, and those not being something that you just have to throw your hands up and give up on. So can you tell us more about your personal experience with the disease, with Alzheimer's?
I had a very personal encounter with Alzheimer's quite a number of years ago when my mom was diagnosed. And my mother was a businesswoman and independent. She was quite a lovely and interesting person, very, very active. And to watch her over a 20-year period, which is how long she survived with it. Most people don't survive that long, but I think because she had some basic good health and attitude that she did. But to watch her go downhill and lose her person, lose who she was, made such an impression on me. I mean, it really, what I could think about was, aside from the sadness of losing my mother, the idea that I did not want that to happen to me. I mean, it was almost a fierceness about it. And of course, in those days, which was, 15 or 20 years ago, there was literally nothing. I mean, that's it. They're not even the drugs. There wasn't people understanding about lifestyle changes. It definitely was a path that you just did not want to go on. So I, at age 67, started really earlier, let's say even 60, 62, 63. But by 67, I knew that I had a serious problem with my memory. I knew that because I would mix up the names of my grandchildren. They'd come over to visit, and I would hug them or scoot them up and call them by the wrong name. And then I would realize when they would say, but that's not my name, that's my brother's name or whatever. I was mortified. I mean, it's just a horrible experience. I started to get lost driving, and I have always had a really good sense of direction. So I would go to a familiar place and get really confused, and that's a common feature of memory loss. Even in my own home, I would reach to turn the light on the wrong wall when the light switch has always been here, and just simple things. Couldn't remember numbers, my phone number, my social security number, my gym locker. I mean, I was at loss, and I panicked. I really went into a panic. I went into a bit of depression, which I had never experienced. I was not a depressive personality, and I just didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. And I mentioned to a very close friend, and we've been friends since we were in our 20s, and I mentioned to her that I just could not go on like this. I did not want to end up in the same way as my mom, and that I was just willing to do anything, but I didn't know what to do. And so she said, well, there's a doctor out in California who's been experimenting with this, and he's found that there are some ways of reversing memory loss. She said, I know him well. I'll call him and see if he'll see you. So she did. And it was Dr. Dale Bredesen in San Francisco. She called him and asked if he would see me, and he said yes. So I flew out and met with Dr. Bredesen for about 2.5 hours, and he explained what then was a very complicated theory of a synaptic process and the brain communicating the cells. And of course, at that point, I couldn't understand any of it, but I wrote notes, and I said, well, tell me what to do, and I'll do it. I'll do anything, because I was at that point of desperate. And so he gave me some guidance, and there were a lot of things that I needed to clean up in my life, a whole long list. But I mean, my diet was horrible. I was drinking diet sodas all the time. I was eating in a regular pattern. I was working a very high stress job overseas. I was exposed to mold, not only when I went overseas, but I was exposed to it in my own house. I didn't realize that that was a danger, that it's a neurotoxin, that people that have high mold exposure, they can't think straight. So I had a lot of things going on. I was not a good sleeper. I didn't pay attention to exercise, and I was stressed. So one by one, I made a long list, and Dr. Bredesen helped me with that. And I started taking yoga for my stress. I threw out everything in my cupboard practically and started buying real food, like not artificial packaged, ultra processed. And sleep was hard. It took me probably 2.5 or 3 years to be able to sleep a normal amount of time. I embraced all of the wearables. I've got the Aura Ring, which is my guide for sleep and other things, and radically changed my life. I mean, I'd say it was pretty much a radical change.
Yeah. Was there a particular moment where in that journey you realized that you had the option to respond with intention instead of fear?
There came a time when, and it wasn't too far in the process, when I realized that I was getting my brain back, that I could think. It was just I remember one sunny Sunday morning in my house, and the sun was streaming in the windows, and I just got clarity of, and it sounds a little silly and ridiculous. It wasn't like a bolt of lightning, but I think I had been getting better but didn't realize it. And then I thought, I'm thinking better. It's like the fogginess was lifting, And I was thrilled. I even called Dr. Bredesen at home on the weekend, and I said, "Guess what?" And he turned to his wife and said, "It works." It was like I was his very first human
Oh, wow.
patient. He had been working with mice, and he almost wasn't going to see me when my friend called him. He said, "No, I don't know. I don't have a clinical practice." And she talked him into it, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But that really it made a huge difference in my life. And when I started to see results, then I was more enthusiastic than ever. I was always enthusiastic about it, but I became really convinced that I had to do this and continue to do it. So.
Yeah. So to that point in your coaching work that you do with others, so and just even thinking about other people that are just listening to the podcast out there, if they're feeling overwhelmed by aging or change to their memory or things like that, where's a good place to start in feeling like they can take control?
The aging, first of all, somebody once said to me, we have nothing, we can't control aging. Chronologically we are going to get older, but we can have a control over how we think about it, whether we are acting old or feeling old or considering ourselves old. So the first thing I tell people is let go of that. Stop thinking about yourself as an elderly person, as an old person, as somebody who can't do something, and start thinking about you can do that. So attitude has to be, in my opinion, has to be first, because if you think you can, and as this adage goes, if you think you can't, you can't. And that's sounds trite, but it is so true. So that is, you start the things that are in your control, that you can. I mean, a lot of things in life we can't control, and we can't control getting older. But what you put into your body, what you eat, it's totally in your control. I mean, you can choose healthy food, or you can eat junk. And if you had a fine Ferrari or a Maserati, would you put the cheapest possible gas into it or never change the oil? No, you wouldn't. But people tend to take better care of their cars than they do their bodies. And so I say, no, don't put junk in your body. And even if you just start with that. And what my grandmother said, I don't know, a lot of grandmothers today, maybe they're more modern, but eat your vegetables, eat your vegetables. That's great advice, because we need a variety of vegetables and fruits, of course, and meat in moderation. But the changing the diet and exercising, get off the couch and start moving. So for people listening to this, and maybe they're feeling a little bit old and they're feeling like, my arthritis hurts, I know my back hurts, because I am totally aware and I empathize with the fact that people have ailments. They have reasons that, well, I can't walk because I have bad knees or whatever. So yes, we have to address those kind of things. But then I say, do what you can do, I mean, for people who can't get on the floor and do yoga, they can do chair yoga, most of them. They can sit in a chair and they can get some small weights and they can lift some weights. And that's going to make a huge difference, not only with your body and your mental attitude, but with your brain. We've found that lifting actually improves your brain, your synaptic process. So I try to encourage people at the level they can control and not set out fantastic goals. Like, you don't have to walk across the country. You can just walk around the block, walk around your house, to do that. But to engage, and also there's so much information now, both in books, and some people say, well, I really can't read that well anymore. Audiobooks are great. When I was walking across the country, I listened to audiobooks all the time. Hundreds of them, everything from Agatha Christie detective stories to historic novels to biographies, and being a constant learner, learning forever, never stop learning. And in terms of health, there's a lot out there in podcasts. If you like to watch something, just find the one that you like and follow some of these people. I mean, there's a long list. And normally they have really helpful people on there who give you hints. And then at the end of the day, don't think you have to do everything. Just do what is in your power to control and watch yourself get better.
Yeah, and I like that idea to, hear you talk about you don't have to walk across the US, just walk around the block. And I do feel like that agency feeds agency, right? Like if you decide that you can control this and you are going to take this step, it'll sort of inevitably get you to some other next step that maybe you didn't think that you could make before, right? So it is you don't have to eat the whole cake, right? Just one
Absolutely.
bite at a
No.
time. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's a process. And I will say, quite honestly, I was able to do what I did walking across the country because I've been working on this for 15 years. It will be 15 years actually in April when I first met Dr. Bredesen, and that was the beginning of my path to wellness. So for 15 years, I have been working on myself to get healthier. I've been doing other things too. I mean, I still work for a living and I
Mhm.
enjoy that, and I probably will to my dying day if I'm able to. But that means that I've exercised on a daily basis. I do meditation to take away the stress and yoga for flexibility, to be flexible. I mean, at 80, almost 81, I can touch my toes, I can do a back bend, I can do the splits because I'm flexible and
Mhm.
I've worked at it. Not because I just walked into a yoga studio and thought, oh, I can do this. No, you'll be really disappointed and very sore. So don't do that. It's a process. So take it easy and start every day to do something. I say let every day be better than the day before. You're working on something, working forward. And the same thing with diet and food. I mean, to um people have a hard time giving up certain things like sugar because it sugar is kind of acts like a drug in our brain. It goes to the center of pleasure in our brain, just like if you took cocaine, and it's habit forming, and we're programmed even as little kids. You get a reward if you eat your food, you get a dessert or you get a lollipop if you go to the dentist, which to me sounds really crazy. They're just drumming up future business. No, I love my
Yeah.
dentist, I'm just teasing. But it's sugar is really, really bad for the brain and for the body. And so that tends to be something that's really hard for people to give up. And so I kind of work with people on a gradual process,
Mhm.
giving up the extra. Don't buy it and have it in your house because, if it's sitting there, you're going to eat it. If you don't have it in the house, you won't eat it. And gradually adding in more things and educate yourself, learn about what's healthy.
Mhm.
But my process has been a long one, and I think I continue it. I still do the things I did 15 years ago
Yeah.
because I'm not ready to go backwards.
Yeah. I should say so.
Yeah.
What is one thing going back to the diet and, that people usually have very deep feelings about what they will and will not eat or, what's one thing that you have had to learn to love to that maybe you didn't like so much before to stick to the regimen that you want to stick with?
Well, that's a challenging question too, because I have been doing this so long. It's kind of hard to think about it. I grew up with a lot of vegetables, I have to say, because we had gardens. We were
Mm-hmm.
kind of poor, and we always had gardens, and we did canned things when for
Mm-hmm.
the winter season. But I wasn't used to eating things like Brussels sprouts and some of the more bitter things. Fermented food is really good for you because it gives your gut bacteria a chance to thrive, and that's another whole topic. But that whole gut brain relationship and the vagus nerve and how your gut really communicates with your brain. So that's why if you put garbage in it, you're going to get garbage out in terms
Mm-hmm.
of your thought process. So that's the science behind it, and it's not just me saying it. It is really true. So for me, I think I mean, I hate to say this because it sounds like I'm really beating up on the diet soda people, but I was addicted to Diet Pepsi and Diet Coke. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was the bee's knees. I would drink a number of them every day. And that was super hard for me to give up. It really was. And I started with things like I would buy seltzer water and put natural flavoring in it. Like you can go at the health food store, you can get cherry stuff and different great. And I would flavor it. I kind of make my own soda, and that was the way I sort of weaned myself. And I started drinking things like iced herbal tea, and it was never the same. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you.
In the last 15 years, have you had?
You know, okay, truth or consequences here. I was on the walk and I was going through Texas, and it was August, and it was desert. I thought I would never get out of the state of Texas, and I loved it. The Texans were great to me, but I remember one day I was so hot and I was so dry, and water after a while didn't taste that great. So we came to a place, and I think there was one lone McDonald's there. And I go into McDonald's and I order a big Diet Coke,
They say they have the best.
And I drank it down. Can't remember if it was Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi, whichever ones that they, because I think it's different with the different fast food places. So I drank it, and then the guilt came. I thought, oh, you can't be. And I told my driver, who was also shooting film, I said, don't you film this. Because I'll never live it down. So here I am on camera confessing. And I didn't die from it. But honestly, I thought, all those chemicals. And the problem is it has the sugar-free element of it is really bad for you. It's bad. I can tell you 50 different ways that it's bad for you, and I won't take your time to do it now. But the aspartame and all of the artificial sweeteners are to be avoided, that along with sugar. So it doesn't leave you in a very good place as far as drinking something like that. But you can always get cold water and bubbly water, plain water, and doctor it up a little bit and find something else that you love, and love your brain and your body more than you love the Diet Coke. Yeah. That's what I kept telling myself. And honestly, I don't miss it. I didn't have any more. So, but I did fall off the wagon there.
So now what's next? What is your next adventure?
Well, I found that I didn't really want to stop walking, because I love that getting up and just going for many reasons. The peace, the just getting in touch with your thoughts and your feelings and your body. So I've decided to jump over the pond and go over to Europe, and I'm going to first walk in the UK. And in the summertime, because I like the warmer weather. It may rain on me a little bit, but that's okay. And so that's the plan for upcoming now. And then while I was walking, a wonderful filmmaker in Germany, Marcus Vetter, and his team did a lot of filming of my walk, and they also filmed Dr. Bredesen and his clinical trials, which, by the way, are out and with fabulous findings. I mean, the improvement of the people in the clinical trials of something like 87%, and by far exceeded anything that you could get from a drug. This is no drugs. This is just lifestyle. And personalized, really personalized approach to it. So the film will be probably released late next year, which would be hopefully 2026. It might be out early 2027. So we had the idea also to co-promote the film, is to walk from theatrical release to theatrical release, or film festival, because there's a famous one in Germany, and then there's one in Amsterdam, there's one in Paris, and all over. So we're going to do some walking later on in the year, but I thought I don't want to sit around until then, so I'm going to exercise my walking this summer.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you sharing your story and your expertise and your experiences with us.
Thank you very much. It's always fun to talk about it. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us on today's podcast. This is There for Care. Share with your friends that are going through the aging journey, whether for themselves or with a loved one. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.